welcome to Live Interactive English. Hello everyone, I'm Mike.
And I'm Sam.
And we are back with day 2 of our look at a very famous stone, the Rosetta Stone, Napoleon's unexpected gift to the world. All right, now we already know that title, it's kind of covering a few different facts. Napoleon didn't find it. It wasn't really a gift, but it was given to the world, I guess, in the end. And it was definitely unexpected. They found it while they were digging to build a fort. But of course, it ended up, the Rosetta Stone, in the British Museum, where we have been lucky to visit. We were talking about it before. Trying to remember highlights of the British Museum is a little hard. I mean, the Rosetta Stone is definitely one, but there is so much stuff in that museum from all over the world that it kind of blows your mind.
Yes, because again, the British Empire was a very big and has a very long history of taking everybody else's
Back in
things
those days, people took stuff from other parts of the world.
And so very, very cool museum. And even though I was trying to remember more and more things that I saw there, I remember the feeling. Like, of course, I remember seeing the mummies and seeing all the stuff from ancient Egypt. That was awesome. And I have a very clear memory of looking at the Rosetta Stone and being like, okay. But the biggest thing that I remember from it is just the feeling of, this is the coolest museum I've ever been to. And I've been to a lot of museums. So maybe I don't remember everything specifically because it was way back when I was in high school. But I remember thinking this museum was done really well. The way it was laid out was really cool. And it was just so many interesting things that you just walked around and went, wow. Just wow all the time.
Very true. The British Museum, the Louvre, even the Gugong here, they're so filled with amazing stuff, amazing old artifacts. It does kind of become a blur. The British Museum's great because instead of going to all these countries, you can see ancient Egyptian stuff, ancient Greek stuff, ancient Chinese stuff, ancient British stuff from thousands of years ago, and it's all in one place. But you're right, there are more countries these days that are saying, we'd like some of that stuff back, please. And so that's an ongoing process. But if you get to go to the British Museum now, you will be given a world tour of world history. So let's find out how the Rosetta Stone helped us unlock the ancient languages of Egypt. Before the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, nobody living could read hieroglyphics. This ancient Egyptian script stopped being used around the end of the 4th century AD, and knowledge of how to read it soon died out. However, at the time of the Rosetta Stone's discovery, many scholars could still read ancient Greek. This meant they could understand the stone's Greek text. So, they used this to decode the hieroglyphics. In the 1820s, the Frenchman Jean-François Champollion became the first person to completely decipher them. The Rosetta Stone's actual message is perhaps the least important part of this story. It simply celebrates the rule of Ptolemy V Epiphanes, king of Egypt. However, what is important is that the stone allowed us to understand many other ancient Egyptian texts. All right, so let's get to it. The Rosetta Stone, Napoleon's unexpected gift to the world, part 2. Now the Rosetta Stone is in London, in Britain, and British scientists are studying it to learn. What are they trying to learn? Well, we learn in the article, before the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, nobody living could read hieroglyphics. As we mentioned in day 1, hieroglyphics are those sort of picture drawings that are a language of ancient Egypt. You would see them painted and carved in temples. And as it says in the article, nobody living could read this. This is a language that was used thousands of years earlier in ancient Egypt. They were all dead. So unless you could bring a pharaoh back to life, that's the movie The Mummy, no one can read this language. So no one can really know what's written in all those temples and pyramids back there in ancient Egypt. And many scientists and archaeologists found this very frustrating and annoying. So they needed a key to unlock the language.
Yes, and so it says this ancient Egyptian script stopped being used around the end of the 4th century AD. So very, very long ago. And knowledge of how to read it soon died out. Yeah. Well, yes, of course, if you're not continuing to use the language, then in just a couple generations, it's very easy for us to lose languages. There are many languages that are now considered dead languages because no one alive can speak it or speak it naturally or fluently or natively. Maybe we can still read some of it, but it's considered dead when there's no living native speakers of it. And unfortunately, that's what happens to many, many languages, and that happened to hieroglyphics.
Exactly right. But remember, the Rosetta Stone has 3 languages written on it. Hieroglyphics is just one of them. So, however, it says at the time of the Rosetta Stone's discovery, 200 years ago in the 1800s, many scholars could still read ancient Greek. Ancient Greek had been around as long or even longer than, as long as hieroglyphics, not longer. And it was still being used. It was a language of teaching in ancient Rome. And then, of course, it was used later on. So a lot of people could read ancient Greek. This wasn't difficult. So that gave them a way in.
Yes, and it says this meant they could understand the stone's Greek text. So they used this to decode the hieroglyphics. Again, the stone has these 3 languages, and it's the same thing written in the 3 different languages. It's kind of like now if you go travel and you see a sign and it might say in Chinese the place you are, but then it might say it in English as well, so that people can kind of figure out where they're going around the world. So same idea, this stone had these different languages saying the same thing. So they used the language that they did know to decode the hieroglyphics. This word decode, it just means that something is written in code or written in some way that you cannot understand it. And if you decode it, it means you're taking it out of the code into something you can understand. Now, normally this is maybe used for literally writing a code like you might use in the military. You wrote your information in a code so that the enemy doesn't know what you're doing. And at the same time, they're trying to decode it so they can figure out what your plans are. But here we've done it with, we are using the Greek language to decode and understand the hieroglyphics.
Exactly right. And in the 1820s, the Frenchman Jean-François Champollion became the first person to completely decipher them. They basically looked at the Greek and they said, okay, we know what this means. So now we'll try to find similar things in the ancient hieroglyphics. And slowly, I think the first thing they decoded was the king's name, because they figured the king's name would be written in there a lot. And once they figured that out, they knew what letters meant, they knew what the symbols meant. It became much easier to decipher. Decipher and decode are very similar. We're trying to understand a hidden or secret language by using logic, by using comparison to a language that we do know. And slowly over time, I mean, today they would use computers to do this, but slowly over time, you can kind of unlock the language and turn it from nonsense into words you can understand. The Rosetta's actual message is perhaps the least important part of this story. It simply celebrates the rule of Ptolemy V Epiphanes, king of Egypt. It's kind of like, I'm the king and I did all these great things. I passed these laws. I built this stuff. I'm awesome. But it says that in 3 languages.
Yes, which is the important part, because the least important part is what it said. It is mostly just important that we understand it. And it says, however, what is important is that the stone allowed us to understand many other ancient Egyptian texts. Because yes, same written language used all over the place. So once they could kind of figure out most of the letters and symbols, then they can apply it to everywhere that they see this.
Exactly, and learn many more interesting things on many more interesting temples and pyramids and all sorts of stuff, because now they can read it, and that's useful. All right, let's take a break.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。在罗塞塔石碑被发现之前，世界上没有人能够阅读象形文字，因为这种古埃及书写系统大约在西元4世纪末就不再有人使用。那如何阅读这种书写系统的知识，很快就失传了。不过，在罗塞塔石碑被发现的当时，许多学者仍然能够阅读古希腊文，所以他们可以理解石碑上的希腊文本，那就利用这一点来破解了象形文字。而罗塞塔石碑上面刻的讯息，只是在赞扬埃及国王托勒密五世神贤者的统治。那也许这个讯息传达内容并不是那么重要，可是重要的是这一块石碑让我们了解了许多其他古埃及文本。好，Mike 老师是有提到 Pharaoh 就是法老 P-H-A-R-A-O-H。Pharaoh， 然后还有提到金字塔的英文是 pyramid P-Y-R-A-M-I-D。那 pyramid 除了指这个金字塔，它还可以表达三角锥体的意思。好，那么文中的补充单字 decode D-E-C-O-D-E decode 它可以表达解译，像是解译某个语言啊、密码或是暗号等等。还有用到 decipher 这个字，那 decipher 也可以表达解译，也是个动词。这边有2个重点，我们进入文法时间。我们来看第一个重点是 WH 疑问词加上 to V 构成名词片语的用法。WH 疑问词像 what, when, where, who, which, how 之后可以接不定词 to V 来形成名词片语，意思就会跟名词子句 WH 疑问词加主词加助动词加动词这样的结构意思相同。那它可以当主词、受词或是补语用。举例来说 I don't know what to wear 就相当于 I don't know what I should wear，我不知道该穿什么。那么 what to wear 是名词片语， what I should wear 是名词子句，它们在句子里面都是当受词用。再造一个例句是 Where to hold the event is still up in the air， 要在哪里举办活动尚未决定。那名词片语 where to hold the event 在这边当主词，要把它视为单数，所以后面搭配了单数动词 is。第二个重点是 what 当复合关系代名词的时候，等同于 the thing that 或是 the things that， 或者是 the one that 或 the ones that。那么 what 引导的名词子句可以当主词、受词或补语用。那注意当主词的话要把它视为单数。我们看一个例句是 What he did was very honorable， 他所做的事很值得尊敬。那名词子句 what he did 是当主词，视为单数，所以搭配了单数动词 was。再看一个例句是 This is what I've been looking for， 这就是我一直在寻找的东西。那名词子句 what I've been looking for 摆在 be 动词后面当主词补语，用来补充说明主词，让它的语义变完整。好，我们接着回到课文中。
As a result, Egyptology, the study of ancient Egypt, blossomed, and our understanding of this fascinating era expanded. Today, we've likely learned all there is to know about the Rosetta Stone itself. However, its legacy lives on. In recent years, many people have taught themselves new languages with the help of Rosetta Stone educational software, a tool that was named in honor of the remarkable rock.
Okay, so as we learned, we have the stone, we have unlocked the ancient Egyptian language of hieroglyphics, and now that can be applied to everywhere that they see hieroglyphics written.
Cool.
Yes, and it says, as a result, Egyptology was the study of ancient Egypt, blossomed, and our understanding of this fascinating era expanded. So again, before, we didn't know that much because there's a lot written, but nobody can read it. And now we can learn all about the history of Egypt. And so we say that Egyptology blossomed. And if something blossomed, that means to grow and to kind of flourish and thrive and do really, really well. So it's not just like grow a little bit, it's kind of like grow all over. And it's similar to, it's the word bloom, it comes from the word like blooming for flowers. So you've got your flower or plant, and then when it blooms and blossoms, then the actual flower comes out. So you can kind of imagine that. It's like Egyptology is kind of like this, and then we figured out the language, and then all of a sudden it just blossomed and expanded. And so it says their friendship blossomed over time. It started out, we don't know each other very well, and then it's turned into something more and deeper and better understanding in all those kinds of ways.
There you go. It started to grow in a healthy kind of way. And yes, this ancient Egyptian, or this era of Egyptology, was suddenly let loose. It blossomed because now everyone could understand what was written in all those old buildings in Egypt. When we talk about an era or an era, this is a period of time when things were the same generally, but different from times before and times after. We can have really long eras or eras if we're looking at history, like the medieval era. We're living in the modern era, which probably goes back to the mid-1800s. But we can also talk about, the rock and roll era, when it was the most popular music. Maybe we're in the hip-hop era now, or something like that. I guess we could say we're in the social media era or era, and before that was the internet era, and things have changed a little bit. Everyone's got a phone and a computer in their pocket. 20 years ago, they didn't. So this is a big change. So it's a term historians and writers would use, but it's not an actual period of time like a decade or a century or anything like that. But it is an important word when you try to understand the history of people and the world. For example, the era of black and white movies is long gone. Yeah, the silent film era kind of ended back in the 1920s.
Yes, and then we also had this word expand, and when something expands, it just grows bigger and bigger and bigger. You can think of it as like a balloon, and when you put air into it, it expands. So this, talking about the actual study of Egypt and all of that, again, it started like this, and now it is expanding and expanding, and the knowledge is growing, and more people know about it, and it's expanded across the whole world, or expanded deep into the history, and we know so much more. And we have an example sentence, and it says, the company expanded and hired more workers. So it grew, it got bigger, they needed to hire more people, and so now it is a bigger company.
There you go. Back to the article. Today, in the time we live in, 2025, we've likely learned all there is to know about the Rosetta Stone itself. However, its legacy lives on. So they have translated the Rosetta Stone, all 3 different languages that are written there. They know what's written there. They probably even know what kind of rock it was written. I mean, they don't know who wrote it, because that was, thousands of years ago. But scientists aren't really studying it now. That's why it's in the museum. But, of course, all of the knowledge that it sort of let loose, that it allowed scientists to study, well, that continues on. Egyptology is still very much a living field of research and discovery.
Yes, and you might have heard this name more recently, not attached to the actual slab in the museum, because it says, in recent years, many people have taught themselves new languages with the help of Rosetta Stone educational software, a tool that was named in honor of the remarkable rock. And so, yes, you might have heard this before. It was, I don't know if it's as popular anymore. I don't hear about it as much, but when it first came out, I remember hearing a lot about it, that you could buy Rosetta Stone and you could follow along and you could learn pretty much any language that you wanted, and it had a step-by-step kind of guide, and it would take you through it and kind of help you get to some level of fluency through through this software that they have created. And software is just programs that you would run on your computer or your Android or your iPhone or any of these kinds of things. If they've written the software, that is the kind of back end of the application that you might be running. So that's all of the coded, using the different languages and computer programming to create the software. And that's different than the hardware, where hardware is your actual physical things that you might be using, like your actual phone, and the software is the stuff that you're using inside of it, the programs, the applications, all that kind of stuff. And so we have our example sentence, and it says, recently, I downloaded new software for editing photos. Maybe you had an old software before, you didn't like it as much, now you have a new one, and it works better.
You're right, yeah, and often people use software and app in kind of the same sort of way. I think app is the more common term these days. Either way, though, as it said, the Rosetta Stone is very remarkable. When something's remarkable, this adjective says it's important. It's something that we should pay attention to. It might be amazing and incredible, but often remarkable is just more like something that is definitely worth paying attention to. It is quite important. Maybe it's not the most amazing thing ever, but it's certainly more than just boring and dull and not important. No, this is definitely remarkable. For example, the scientist made a remarkable discovery, and all his scientist friends went, ooh, that's cool, because it was so remarkable. All right, what do you think? Here's a question for you guys. All right, if you were the officer, so you're now a French army officer, if you were the officer in charge of the digging work in 1799, how would you have reacted to finding the Rosetta Stone?
I think my first thought would have been, how do I make this kind of connected to me so that when anybody takes it and it turns into this big discovery, I would like my name to be there and not just officer.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe it should be named after the guy and not just the place they found it. Well, as the officer, as the French army officer, I would have said, ah, mon Dieu, which is French for, oh, wow. And then I would probably say, why am I wearing my uniform? It's so hot here.
Yes, oh yeah.
Because they always looked hot. Anyways, that's just me. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. If you ever get a chance to visit the British Museum and see the Rosetta Stone, grab that opportunity, or even better, go to Egypt and see the real pyramids for yourself. What an adventure. Take care and bye-bye. I don't know how to say bye-bye in ancient Egyptian. Maybe just bye-bye. Oh, there we go. Bye.
罗塞塔石碑帮助人们了解了许多其他古埃及文本，因而让埃及学蓬勃发展。那我们对古埃及这段迷人时代的认识也不断的增加。好，单字 blossom。Blossom 这个动词就可以表达蓬勃发展、兴盛，它也可以表达植物开花。那 Sam 老师有提到 flourish 这个动词 ，flourish。flourish 可以表达茁壮成长、繁荣或者是蓬勃发展的意思。下一个单字 era 或是念作 era， 它表示时代、时期。expand 这个动词则表示扩大、扩展。那课文最后提到，近年来在罗塞塔石碑教育软体的协助下，许多人自学了新的语言。那这项工具其实就是为了向这一块非凡的石碑致敬而命名的。好，文中用到 software 就是软体，它是不可数。remarkable 则是形容非凡的、不同寻常的或是引人注目的。Mike 老师有提到 incredible 这个形容词 ，incredible 也可以形容非凡的、了不起的或是难以置信的。那这边一个重点，我们进入文法时间。我们来看这个重点是 in honor of 加上某人或某事物，表示为了纪念什么什么，为了向什么什么致敬。例如 they built a statue in honor of the general， 他们建了一座雕像纪念那一位将军。那比较一个用法是In memory of somebody 则是表达纪念已故的人，像是 He wrote a song in memory of his late aunt， 他写了一首歌纪念他已故的姑姑。好，那么以上的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Before the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, nobody living could read hieroglyphics. This ancient Egyptian script stopped being used around the end of the 4th century AD, and knowledge of how to read it soon died out. However, at the time of the Rosetta Stone's discovery, many scholars could still read ancient Greek. This meant they could understand the stone's Greek text. So they used this to decode the hieroglyphics. In the 1820s, the Frenchman Jean-François Champollion became the first person to completely decipher them. The Rosetta Stone's actual message is perhaps the least important part of this story. It simply celebrates the rule of Ptolemy V Epiphanes, king of Egypt. However, what is important is that the stone allowed us to understand many other ancient Egyptian texts. As a result, Egyptology, the study of ancient Egypt, blossomed, and our understanding of this fascinating era expanded. Today, we've likely learned all there is to know about the Rosetta Stone itself. However, its legacy lives on. In recent years, many people have taught themselves new languages with the help of Rosetta Stone educational software, a tool that was named in honor of the remarkable rock.
You know, Shane, I've been wanting to explore new opportunities and meet new people.
Right.
Well, I've decided to take the plunge and move to a new country.
Move to a new country? Oh my goodness, that's a huge step. Oh, wait. Take the plunge? Is diving part of your moving process?
No, Shane. Take the plunge means that you're finally committed to something that you've been thinking about.
Oh. But are you really ready to leave all your friends and family and everything that's familiar behind you?
Well, if I want change in my life, I'll need to embrace it. Right?
Yeah.
Don't you think it's a good idea?
I see.
Hello everyone, today's phrase is take the plunge. It's not about diving into water, right Shane?
Definitely not. Take the plunge means to make a big decision or commitment, usually something that's a bit scary or uncertain.
Although it's not literally about diving, imagining jumping into water can help us remember this phrase.
Exactly. Imagine standing by the sea, about to jump into the water. It's a bit scary because the water might be cold or you're not sure how deep it is, just like making a big decision.
The phrase is often used when talking about major life changes, like getting married, moving to a new country, or even changing careers.
An example sentence would be, it took him a lot of courage, but he finally took the plunge and opened his own restaurant.
Or you could also say, after years of renting, I took the plunge and bought my first house.
Awesome. So let's take the plunge ourselves and really commit to learning this new expression.
And that's all for today.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.